Ronald Silva was standing with a friend in his driveway when he was shot and killed by an illegal alien who had been previously deported. Agnes Gibney, who was De Silva's mother, said, "The guy who killed my son has a determinate sentence in prison, but I have a lifetime sentence of grief and pain." Alapomar Alamontario is an illegal alien from Mexico. He murdered Grant Rohnbach with a gun on January 22nd, 2015 in Mesa, Arizona. ICE was working to determine whether or not he should be deported when he had the opportunity to commit this crime. Gustavo Garcia, a 36-year-old illegal alien, shot and killed a 51-year-old Rocky Paul Jones on December 17th at a gas station. Garcia had previously been deported by ICE. Before his deportation, he had a criminal record going all the way back to 2002, where he had illegally possessed a firearm. In addition to murdering Jones, Garcia also shot a farm worker in the chest who was picking fruit, committed armed robbery, and shot and attempted to kill a woman after he followed her to a Motel 6. On January 2nd, 2019, an illegal alien shot and murdered California officer Ranil Singh, a story that captivated the attention of the country. On November 13, 2018, an illegal alien shot and killed 3 people in Missouri after he was released on domestic violence charges. This was Luis Perez, age 23, was a recipient of the DACA program in 2012 and 2014. So time and again, Mr. Chairman, we see circumstances where people illegally come into the possession of firearms. Each of these illegal aliens did not acquire these guns lawfully. Matter of fact, Title 18 of the Federal Code says that it is always unlawful for an illegal alien to have a firearm. And so while I appreciate folks from my state of Florida coming and sharing their advice and their counsel to the Judiciary Committee, I think that the stories of other people who have been impacted by gun violence are relevant to our discourse, because they speak to the fact that there are dangerous people who do illegal things who will have access to firearms. The question is, what will ensure that that does not cause the massive amount of violence that we've seen in the country? And so I'm encouraged by elements of legislation passed in my home state of Florida that focus on red flag circumstances, mental health, that look at people who go through our jails and do everything we can to ensure that when their time in incarceration is concluded, they don't go back to arsenals where they can do harm to themselves or others. But as I review H.R. 8, it seems to me that there's nothing in the bill that would have stopped many of the instances that we've been discussing. And moreover, if we're really looking for solutions, maybe we ought to allow states to do what Florida did and analyze the impacts on our mental health system, recognizing that those systems are different across the 50 states. And so I hope that we will not adopt this federalization of deprivation of constitutional rights. I hope that we will allow our states to continue to innovate and find ways to keep communities safer. And as we hear the stories and circumstances for those here, I hope we do not forget the pain and anguish and sense of loss felt by those all over the country who have been the victims of violence at the hands of illegal aliens. H.R. 8 would not have stopped many of the circumstances I raised, but a wall, a barrier on the southern border may have, and that's what we're fighting for.
Mr. Chairman.
Well,
Gentlemen will suspend. Everyone here is here as a guest of the committee,
yes.
And no matter what you think of what any member of the committee may say, or any witness for that matter, you must not comment or otherwise demonstrate.
Mr. Chairman, may I have my time restored?
Your time will be restored.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. And so again, I think that was a rather instructive moment for the committee, Mr. Chairman, because as we gather here in Washington, there are a divergent series of views and inputs and thoughts. And my concern is that by adopting H.R. 8, we actually stifle the innovation that could lead to better public safety outcomes if we allowed states and local communities to deal with the challenges my great state of Florida has. And so again, I hope that we'll deal with all of the drivers of violence. The greatest driver of violence in the circumstances that I indicated was not the firearm. It was the fact that we have an immigration system that allows people to come here violently. We engage in...
There will be no comments or demonstrations, please.
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
Who's it?
Is there
Gentleman
any
from Rhode Island.
committee rule or a point of parliamentary inquiry, is there any committee rule that prevents a member of Congress from reciting false statements in a committee hearing that are unsupported by the evidence, or are members of Congress entitled to just make things up in support of specious arguments? It's a parliamentary inquiry.
I'm not aware, off the top of my head, since I haven't researched this question, I'm not aware of any such rule. I would also observe that the factuality of any statement is always subject to contest by someone who disagrees with it. At a hearing such as this, if a member makes a statement that is not borne out by the facts, it's the prerogative of another member, when his turn comes, to comment on that or to point out his opinion or her opinion as to its truth or falsity.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, my colleague,
Mr. Chairman, no.
I believe I still control the time.
Mr. Chairman.
One moment. It is never permissible for members of the audience to comment or vociferously to object. This is a hearing for members of Congress and for the witnesses. Everyone else is here as an observer and must not participate in any way other than by observing.
Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman from...
Mr. Chairman, I make a point of order against the gentleman from Rhode Island. I make a point of order that the gentleman's words were unparliamentary because they implied the lying or the falsehood of a member. Now, if he wants to go there, then we'll take words down.
I would rule the gentleman's point of order not well taken because although because there was not an accusation.
Did he not?
Excuse me, let me finish. There was not an accusation of falsity by another member. There was simply an inquiry as to rules regarding that subject.
Did he not make the statement that he was asking that the member was making, or how to stop a member from making false statements? Did he or did he not?
My recollection, we could have it read back, but I don't think that's necessary, is that he simply asked about the rules that we use when if a member makes a false statement, which is an inquiry. It is not a direct accusation that a member made a false statement.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'll just recommend that that line got so far up that there was no way to see if it was crossed. He got so close to that line that he couldn't tell if he was over it or not. So I think we need to continue to watch. We'll let the gentleman continue, but this needs to happen in an orderly way. We have differences of opinion. Those differences of opinion need to be expressed, and when those differences are messed up, we need to stay in a parliamentary procedure. This is not going to result in just complete yelling and accusing of each other.
Well,
that's what you're telling for. He's got 5 minutes coming up. He can say whatever he wants to say.
Yelling is out of order, obviously, yelling by members of the audience. The inquiry by a member did not violate the rules because it was not a direct accusation against another member. How much time does the member have left?
I do have one more secondary parliamentary question.
The gentleman will state
As
his
it's been stated in the past,
inquiry.
as it's been stated in the past, Mr. Chairman, when members of the audience disrupt this, they are typically escorted out. Is that going to be the position of this chair, or are we going to continue to allow?
Clause 2K4 of Rule 11 provides that, quote, the chair may punish breaches of order and decorum by censure and exclusion from the hearings. This rule has been construed to afford the chair the discretion to enforce decorum in the committee room, including through removal of disruptive members of the public. My preference is not to invoke this response at this time, but please consider this a warning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your clarification.
Mr. Chairman, I have a point of parliamentary inquiry.
This gentleman will state his point of parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, is there a process in the committee whereby if the very same people are repeatedly interrupting the time of the members, that those people will be asked to depart the committee, or is there...
I will, excuse me, if the gentleman repeats that or any other comment, I will direct it be removed. I will direct it be removed if he repeats it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'd observe that's 3 interruptions of my time by the same individual and that the chair is not utilizing his discretion to remove that individual. I believe I have about a minute of time remaining, and I wanted to take the time.
Will the gentleman yield for will my friend yield for a question?
Well, I typically do, my friend from Florida, but since my time has been so interrupted by members of the other side, perhaps you could have one of your colleagues yield time to you. Mr. Chairman, may I inquire as to the time I have remaining, because I believe it was about a minute and 12 seconds.
The gentleman has 1 minute and 37 seconds left.
You need to clear the
Thank you,
block.
Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that.
The gentleman will proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We all are entitled to our own opinions and views on how to address gun violence, but I don't believe that we are entitled to our own facts. And while I have great personal affection for the gentleman from Rhode Island, it is deeply troubling to me and hurtful that as I share the experiences of people who've lost sons and daughters, who've lost friends and neighbors at the hands of violent illegal aliens who have illegally acquired firearms, that my colleague would indicate that that's somehow lying or making misrepresentations to the committee. And so if my colleagues on the other side of the aisle have solutions for gun violence or to secure our border, or to make sure that illegal aliens don't come into possession of firearms, I'm eager to hear those. But in your debate with me, please don't demean or diminish the pain and suffering, the humanitarian consequences, the violence, the bloodshed that has occurred because we allow illegal aliens to come into our country, receive the veils of protection, benefit from policies of catch and release that my friends on the other side of the aisle have supported, and then come here and act like that is the great challenge of our day to deal with gun violence. If we really cared about safer streets, we would build a wall and secure the border, and we would do it post-haste. I thank the chairman for his indulgence, and I yield back the balance
Parliamentary
of my
inquiry,
time.
Mr. Chairman.
The gentlelady will state a parliamentary inquiry.
And I will direct it not at any particular member. I do think in this committee that the parliamentary inquiry is the caution of making sure that we do not have broad labels of immigrants, African Americans, women, as we debate. We have a right to a disagreement, but is there any rules that confine us to not labeling individuals, such as the term illegal immigrants, which is a vast term of individuals, including women and children?
I don't think that's a proper parliamentary inquiry.
I thank the chairman. I'll pursue it in another manner. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness is, no.